he said, you think that you're doing something good by them by giving them no boundaries and accepting everything they do, but they look at what's happened. They've become much more evil than they were when you first met them.
So let's read this for what it is. She's a 9-wing 1. She's definitely a 1-wing.
It's a kind of aggression, actually, to dissociate.
That innocence in us, your soul, basically, needs you to guard it. And it's like, even if everything is fucked up in the whole world, like, protect your soul could be the only important thing.
The Big Hormone Enneagram.
I'm John Lekovich, 4-wing-5, sexual self-pres, 458 Trifix.
I'm David Gray, self-pres sexual, 9 with 1 wing, 974 Trifix.
What up, it's Emeka. I'm an 8-wing 7, sexual self-pres with 854 fixes.
Hi, I'm Alexandra. I'm a social self-preservation 9-wing 1, 963 Trifix.
Like and subscribe on Apple and Spotify, and leave us a review. If you want to support the show with a donation, you can find us on Venmo at Big Hormone and paypal.me/Big Hormone. We're going to talk about Dogville today.
Dogville.
I still didn't get a chance to watch it. So,
What do you mean?
Great.
Oh,
I mean,
I
saw
thought you
it
were there.
that day. I was there that day, but I was not there that day.
He was just dissociating.
I was.
But then you
Not
talked
for you,
about it
baby.
afterwards.
I talked about it because I was in it, at that
Playing.
day to some degree.
To some degree.
Yeah.
That's probably as much as anyone could expect you to watch that movie.
Yeah.
That's probably
Well-
as good as it's going to get.
No, I mean, I like
That's also
disturbing movies,
so very
but I
nine.
just wasn't there.
I've seen that movie like 5 times, and it's still my favorite movie.
I brought up Dogville several times to different clients to
Oh, nice.
illustrate.
Cool.
Yeah, various attachment phenomenon. So I'm glad that we're going to talk about it. Before we get into it, I just want to plug on the Enneagram School. I did a seminar for my Egypt trip. But if you're interested in the mysteries of Egypt and how they're connected to inner work tradition and the Enneagram itself, I have a 3-hour seminar on the enneagramschool.com. So check it out. It's called The Ancient
Nice.
Egypt and Inner Life.
It's been a while.
It has been a
I
while.
know.
I've been fucking
I know, we gotta get
sick as
back into the groove.
fuck all month. I haven't been able to like talk or have any energy. I'm still pretty low energy.
Plugs. Talk about Enneagrammer. Enneagrammer. People who are interested in talking about the stuff that we do. Enneagrammer. We have videos every week that we do on typings if you want to learn how to become more perceptive. Oh, we've been doing Bermuda overlays for the last month and a half. It's been really interesting. I mean, it's kind of cool to the closer we look at Bermudas, the more the secondary influences are louder. So we
We did
A lot of-
Alexandra's today, and it was
Yeah,
really
Oh, I
actually.
was going to say,
Actually,
you
it was-
forgot about
it was-
me.
Yeah. No,
Oh,
it's
we
really-
roasted the hell. I mean,
Well, man.
really
Oh,
good.
Yeah, great.
Really,
Yeah,
really
great.
good. Yeah,
Sick. Can't wait.
it's been fun.
No,
Let's see.
it's actually good though. I mean, it's Roast City, but it's actually
Really good stuff. Yeah.
it's good.
All right. Am I going
And-
to cry and not talk to you guys for 3 weeks?
No,
No,
afterwards?
it's not like that.
You're gonna cry with
All right.
pride. Overlay.
Okay.
It's gonna be
Nice.
a beautiful moment.
And
All right,
we've been
cool.
looking at 3-wing 2 versus 3-wing 4. I think that's probably something we're going to do here too. But
Yeah.
we're doing like a
Yeah, I
big
think we should.
overhaul on all our 3-fix typings. So yeah, you can watch our videos at Enneagrammer.com. And if you are still on the fence about your typings, you can get help with that too.
I'd like to shout out to all the people that think we constantly market and say
We're such great marketers.
we're such great marketers. Can't you see it? Can't you feel it?
We make so much money.
I
Yeah,
know.
we
A lot
make
of
so
money.
much money.
We're very wealthy from this.
Wealthy.
This is all a marketing scheme.
Because
Next,
people talk about us, they think that this is just a great marketing scheme because they can't
Next-
stop talking about us.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Next gathering, we're going to rent a 120-foot yacht with a
Yeah.
team of chefs and
Yeah, this is our Twin Flames empire.
I listened to a whole thing on AI people. Like there's a lot of businesses that are sort of like trying to push AI before anybody kind of knows what it's about, and
Mhm.
they've almost like they have like almost very literally like religious language around AI as this sort of, it's like, and it's kind of got this sense of like AI is the like conscious expression of the market. It's like the market developed AI, and then the AI is like this, like almost like a savior figure. And they've been talking about stuff like that if you prevent the development of AI, because AI will hypothetically save so many people and so many lives in the future, that you are basically guilty of something like murder or something like that.
What?
Tampering with
Yeah.
the future.
You're tampering with all the unlimited benefits that haven't come to fruition yet of AI in the future. So to regulate it, to oppose it, to be suspicious of it, is to have a heresy. So I mean, the religious language is like it's actually religious. So it's very interesting.
It's funny how everything comes back to religion ultimately.
Absolutely, yeah, totally.
Everything.
It's really everything's like there's this.
It's the
like
most powerful
religiousness.
business in the world.
Yeah, religiousness it just hooks the emotions like nothing else.
It's because our Enneagram, whatever type you are, whatever configuration of typology, it is an inner religion of shoulds and shouldn't you see.
Mm-hmm. We just typed Osho today
yeah.
for DAA.
Oh, really? What's the spoiler on that?
Oh, I mean, I think we already know what his type. Social sexual
Ikram?
7-wing 8. But 7-wing 8.
7-wing 8?
But 7
Okay,
wing
okay.
8.
Ikram, basically, yeah.
Fuck yeah. It's the dude that David told me about. Who had a bunch of like Ferraris and stuff.
Rolls Royces.
Rolls
He had
Royces.
dozens and dozens of Rolls Royces.
And I think he only wanted to be preaching to hot people. That
It
was
was something
There,
like
there
that.
you go, yeah.
It was exactly that.
If you're
He talks
ugly, you're not
sexual.
invited.
He talks about Buddha dancing in a nightclub with a beautiful woman, just saying like, if the Buddha is actually a Buddha, I mean, that shouldn't affect his enlightenment or be a statement about his enlightenment or not enlightened.
That's what I
agree.
say
The
with
Buddha should have
Alexandra.
chill.
Is to
Yeah.
get her, I was like, you're very beautiful, but to be as enlightened as I am, I need whatever the fuck. Just been a manipulation.
Yeah.
That's spirituality to Riz.
Yeah, exactly.
Spirituality Riz.
Alexander's
To
like,
reach
I'm not fucking
enlightenment,
comfortable
we
with
must
this. I'm like,
fuck.
Shh.
Yeah.
Riz me.
I was like, yeah, I'd join Osho's fucking cult. He's like,
Honestly, I felt the same way. It wasn't in the documentary. It wasn't until the guns came out that I was like, "Oh shit, this is bad."
Didn't they give everybody like
Bermuda
salmonella?
moron just went right into it. Yeah, that
Food poisoning?
crazy 8 woman. I forgot.
Yeah,
her
that's
name.
awesome.
Sheila.
Isn't this
Sheila, right.
spirituality jizz? Oh, sorry. Oh, sorry, I forgot what kind of show I was on.
Spirituality jizz. No, I'd join that club. I'd join that cult. There's no inner work here. There's just inner
I probably
fun.
still would.
Inner fun.
Inner fun.
Welcome to my world.
That's what everyone's looking for when they go to a cult, but they just don't know how to do it right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Just want to have fun. All right, we better get started. We
All right.
don't have all the time in the world. So we want to talk about Dogville. I've been talking about this film for years, but you guys finally watched it because my DJ7 girlfriend
Did all the work for us.
Yeah, DJ'd it for everybody.
Hell yeah.
So yeah,
She's
I've
got
seen
more
it.
Riz than you.
Sure, I'll concede.
Yeah.
We all know who's the underlying engine for all that. No, I mean just I guess my own impression of the movie. It's my favorite movie because not only how masterfully well it's done, but I think it's a good illustration of rejection, but also the contrast between and also attachment. And I think the naivety of attachment makes the rejection that much more distinct. I think it's probably one of the few movies that brought me to tears probably at least 2 or 3 times that I've seen it, and I think it just made me see rejection as if I was seeing it for the first time. And so I'm interested we could talk about like you guys' impression of it. There's a lot of different threads we can pull out from that movie. Disclaimer, because we're gonna spoil the fuck out of this movie. If watch it before you listen to this pod.
It's a
Yeah, do
movie
you
you
wanna
really
give-
don't want to be spoiled for.
You don't want to have
Yeah.
this spoiled. So yeah,
Who's
By-
the director?
Lars von Trier.
It's 5, right?
Dogville.
He's a
by Lars
5 wing
von Trier.
4 sexual self pres. It's a social blind. You can it's very clearly
Oh.
social blind script.
Let's.
To your Trifix.
584.
And do you have a? Let's go through the like plot, because sometimes when we go talk about movies and stuff, we just don't even elaborate.
Yeah. That's very social of you. Yes. Good.
Yeah, I'm learning.
So overview. There's a woman who is running away from a mafia, and she comes across a small town in the mountains, and
it's like the 1920s, right?
Yeah, very long time
Something
ago,
like that.
some like 1930s or something like that.
Yeah.
And so the townspeople, she gets discovered, and the townspeople take her in to sort of protect her from the people that are coming after her in exchange for her doing duties and doing work.
Like service. Yeah.
Yeah, services. And at first is really amiable and seems friendly, and I don't want to give away too much of the premise but that's kind of like the basic premise, and then things just kind of get worse from there. And I don't know. I mean, John, what kind of overview do you beyond?
Well,
giving
yeah.
away
I
the
mean,
story?
I think some things to note is that it's more like in my view like a parable,
Yes.
rather than like it's not supposed to be like a realistic plot in a sense.
Mhm.
And part of what's interesting about it is that it's shot, it's shot in like a stage, and instead of walls for the town, they just have like chalk drawings like you'd see on a stage, and instead of shrubs or whatever, they just show 2 circles that say shrubs, and you can kind of see what's happening in the whole town when they do a wide angle or something. You can see everybody in their homes and stuff like this, and so there's this sort of theme of like, in my view, like of transparency, of just like seeing things for what they are, but how the main character sees herself changes what she's viewing. So it's like, everybody can see what's happening the whole time. Everybody can see, what's happening, but her naivete, and then as she kind of switches some views about herself, it's the same fucking town. She can see right through it, but it changes the whole orientation. That's how I read that. But it's a really interesting directorial trick or thing. Like, I've never seen that in a movie before. And it's not a distraction. It's like you get right into it, and it doesn't do anything. And I'll also add that the woman who is escaping the mobsters, she's played by Nicole Kidman. She kind of like gets integrated into the town through this guy who's like a 9 philosopher type, who she's probably a 9 and he's a philosopher. He's a 9 as well. She kind of represents like the archetypal 9 structure in a certain way, of like extreme distilled 9, of just like really giving away her agency. And then this guy presents a particular kind of dark side of 9, in the sense of someone who thinks he is doing the right thing and has the big picture view and is in love with her, and all this kind of stuff, and how, you see him, and there's all these other very distinct personalities and characters throughout the film, and you see kind of there's this sort of hopeful, quirky side to them, and then it gradually opens up into just how like sadistic and dark all the people are. So
there's a lot of different angles you could look at this film. Like another way you could look at it is that it's a symbol for society, and that 9 who was sort of vouching for her is like a politician, and and so she might represent the individual who, it's like you come in and they teach you this is what you need to do to fit in, and you got to work, and eventually you're required to do more work and get paid half as much, and eventually you just get taken advantage of. And so it felt like that dude who ended up like, oh, I'm working for you, I'm trying to help you, believe in me and you cast your vote. And if there's a democracy, people are voting for what to do with this person. Eventually, you end up just getting exploited. I also thought it was interesting how the choice for not having the walls or the buildings be real is kind of like symbolic for how we just spend our lives just working to earn money, to live in these houses that don't mean anything. Like it's just the people and it's just their relationships, but the structures themselves, like the houses, are just even like the little dolls, that she ended up earning.
Oh yeah.
At first, she was like, "These things are ugly. They don't really mean it," but they were symbolic for like it represented
Her idealization
of just the whole
something.
exchange.
Yeah.
But in of itself, it doesn't. The house doesn't mean anything. But it's like it becomes meaningful because you spent your whole life working for it. The car, all these material possessions, you worked for it, so it means something. But it doesn't mean anything in of itself. And so I like the fact that it was just you couldn't see any of it.
Yeah, so this woman is hiding in the town of Dogville, and Emma is saying she's trying to, like, the town is a little ambivalent about her being there at first, and the Philosopher 9 is like, I'll work out a situation where you can earn your keep here, and gradually there's like the mobsters show up at the town, and they like question like, oh, have you seen this woman? And everybody's like, oh no, we haven't seen her. But so they're getting the kind of they're feeling tension, but they're also kind of having leverage over her. And so she is trying to, she kind of rotates by like home to home to home. So like one woman, I think she like babysits their kids or kind of does some kind of tutoring of the kids. There's a guy that's like in denial that he's blind, but he's blind, and she's kind of both there to keep him company, but then kind of help him see his blindness. There's like this Skarsgård, whatever the fuck his first name is.
The he's a apple picker.
Yeah, he works in the orchard.
Yeah, he's some kind of 8 who's like kind of this kind of dickhead who is seems to be softening by her presence. There's a couple other kind of characters like this, and so the beginning of this parable is a little bit like there's a narrator too, and so it's sort of like, in the town of Dogville, she started to help everybody out, and everybody's sort of coming around and whatever. And then like, the cops will come by and be like, have you seen this girl?
Yeah.
And then it makes the townspeople more uneasy, and they will have like these like town meetings where they'll kind of like kind of argue about what to do and vote on it. And as as it escalates, where, oh, this is a person wanted for questioning. And then it becomes, oh, she was part of a bank robbery, even though she was hiding in Dogville during the time of the alleged bank robbery, so she didn't actually do it. So even though there's actually no substance to some of the leverage, the town people gradually start to see themselves having leverage over her, and her being this very open, innocent, wide open 9. They just take as much as they can, and she doesn't really have a capacity to say no to it.
Well, she sees it as an even exchange. Even in the movie, there are points where she starts to realize that it's uneven, but she still accepts it as an even exchange. Because something to say towards the beginning of this, when she first arrives at the town, that philosopher, I forget the guy's name, Ben? Am I making that up? It doesn't matter.
His name doesn't matter.
Anyway, the guy, he pitches to her, this town is very close. It's a very cohesive environment. Everybody knows everybody. Everyone trusts everyone. We all get along. So you are going to have to pitch yourself as being valuable here somehow in order to, sort of like as your ticket into being protected by the town. So she goes from house to house and offers favors. And it's interesting. Something to note is that when she does her first round of offering favors, nobody has anything that they need done. There's no help that they're accepting because they don't think there's anything to do. So then she finds ways to just kind of convenience everyone. And so she starts with the leverage, actually, because she creates this need that people didn't have to begin with. And then throughout the film, that leverage gets turned on its head because now they're taking that favor for granted. Now it's become something that they need and that they're holding in exchange for her supposed protection from these mafia people.
Philosopher guy's named Tom, by the way.
Tom. Okay, great.
The conversation on attachment versus rejection, the contrast really illustrates what attachment is and also what rejection is. Because baked into the entire film and all the dynamics is people exercising leverage over her, and her basically just attaching to the situation and not seeing her situation as, she's not seeing the leverage that she has in the situation and that she can apply or negotiate her position, because she sees herself as just, you know, these town people get to set the terms for my being here, and if I want to be here, I need to adapt to the situation and just comply with what they want. As a
She's
rejection
also
type,
valuing something different.
Mhm.
That was the one of the most shocking things about the movie, is that she has this very angelic presence and really does improve their lives and never asked for anything. Really, never asked for anything. They offered something when they were in a good mood or whatever. And when they kept on applying more pressure onto her, she continued to give more, I think, to preserve the attachment she had with them, and because she really valued them as people. And she, I guess, I don't know, one of the saddest things about the film is that, like, that hope that was inside of her was like such, her name is Grace, and she has so much freaking grace for these people, and she never gets that in return. Yeah.
Part of
there's
Emeka mentioned the dolls, and
yeah,
there's like these dolls that she sees in some window of some shop or something, of non-existent walls that exist, you know, in the set. But she was the first initially kind of like turned off by them, but then kind of began to see the dolls as representing the community and standing in for it. So she wanted to collect them and earn money to get them, because it was this like attachment thing, and you know, it just represented this prioritizing the ideal over the actual. And so, if I'm not mistaken, in terms of what happens in the plot, like, it's like as the police or whatever apply a little bit of pressure by saying like, hey, have you seen this woman, or turn this woman in, that's when the townspeople start to kind of just critique her needlessly for like little things in these tasks that they didn't initially need done anyway. And that starts to, then, you know, her attachment thing gets kicked in of like, oh, I better do better. You know, I better accept this kind of basically dehumanization to escalate, because I'm invested in community.
Yeah, but the police thing is, it's like I mean, to me, I look at that as like a leverage opening. Like, something happens that gives you the opportunity to apply pressure to gain a better position relative to someone else. And so she didn't see any options for herself to negotiate.
You know, she even said, I can leave, because she's interpreting it as like, oh, they don't want me here anymore, I'm stressing them out. They're like, no, don't leave, do freaking more. Yeah,
that's a good point. Yeah, so it's not necessarily that she like didn't see the option. She didn't like see the option to apply leverage, but I think like in her good faith and in her hopefulness, she just went along with it. She's like, this is what we need to do in order to keep harmony, in order to stay in each other's good graces and good favor and all of that. Like, she didn't even think leverage is just not something. And of course, when we find out we'll talk about the end of the film, but we find out that her outlook has been completely based on grace.
Yeah, that these people are going to end up doing right by me eventually.
Yeah, I think she notices that they're cruel and like something is completely rotten inside of them. But I think she just believes that if she can give them more grace, that she can like turn their hearts into beating ones.
Because of course, part of 9 especially is absorbing. It is taking sort of like taking the world and manipulating yourself through those blows and those obstacles. That's your only choice. That's your only option. And there's a certain arrogance to the 9 outlook and the 9 adaptability, because it thinks it can constantly do it and be unscathed, be unaffected by it.
I mean, that gets into kind of the fulcrum of the movie, where part of the escalation that happens with her is why did they get suspicious of her for something like really arbitrary, and then they needed to lock her up? What was it that they were starting to?
Oh,
that guy fucked her over. Sorry, go ahead.
Well, it took a while to get there. Like, what started her getting abused was she started getting raped, and that had a domino effect where, all right, now you're just the town whore, and you're seducing all our men, and so that turned all the women against her, and she wanted to try to escape. And then the next level was, in her attempt to escape, she got blamed for stealing the money that was used in her attempt to escape. And so when she came back, they just decided to tie her up. I believe that's right.
Yeah. To even go back a little bit, like it starts very slowly. Like she's babysitting those kids, and there's that one kid that like is really acting up, and you can see specifically, in my memory, it starts with the child that is pushing on her boundaries. Like he sees the opening of, she's not going to be mean to me. She's not going to do anything to disrupt any kind of good point of contact. So we can really start to get away with things. So the man that ends up assaulting her, it is the same thing. He realizes that she's not going to say no.
Right.
Her nature is just accepting, and it is just receptive. So people start to just apply pressure because they know she's not going to resist anything.
I just remembered the other day, like even the kids were fucking with her.
Her kind of receptivity. I mean, the first thing that happened was that weird fucking kid was like, I want you to spank me. And then started to be like more of an asshole to provoke her to spank him. And it was like clearly, even though he's like, huh?
I was just going to say, was there reverse pedophilia? And I didn't expect there to be.
Are you asking?
Oh, yeah. Well, because
he was kind of like a young David character who wanted an older woman to handle him.
Yes.
Oh, God.
But it's
Your
like
voice too was just so professional. Was there reverse pedophilia?
Yes. I am the professor, intellectually curious about this.
It's like the kid had like an adult brain of understanding how to like apply pressure on this woman. Like he just knew, like, if you don't, then I'm going to do this and get you in trouble. I'm like, damn, is that kid like a little 8 monster?
Yeah, well, it's like, she's innocent and expects innocence from a child. And then the child's like manipulating her and like weirdly sexually activated by her. And so eventually she spanks him, and then she's helping out the apple picker, who the whole time, has been kind of this like gruff, suspicious guy. And it seems like maybe she was getting through to him. And then I can't remember exactly what it turned, but again, it was like a sexual thing that like, I'll just take what I can from her, and just assaults her. And it's like, it's filmed with no walls. And so there's like a zoom out shot of what's happening from the other side of the town. And, and then she tells Tom, her 9 philosopher pseudo boyfriend, about it. And his response, I can't remember exactly what it was, but it was not to like, defend
didn't do
her.
anything.
It was like,
uphold any boundary himself.
Yeah, it was kind of like to rationalize it and figure out how to like smooth things over more.
Politician.
Which like escalated the situation. And the women started to, initially they invited how she was attractive. Like that one girl, who was kind of like the town sexy girl, was like, oh, I'm glad you're here because now the men aren't like giving me all this extra attention. And then it turns into, oh, you're this like fucking disgusting temptress. And, and then, she tries to escape the town with this like shy kind of broken man who had revealed to her that he visits like brothels, and she like normalized it, made it okay for him. So then when she's hiding, she's trying to like sneak out of town on his truck in the back of the bed of the truck. He goes in there and assaults her as well, as like, he says like, oh, you made this normal for me. And then,
he accepts it as payment.
Yeah. I mean, he was claiming that there were cops inspecting, and it's like, this increased danger, I'm going to have to charge more. If it's no difference to you, instead of just accepting money, instead of going to the brothel, let me. And she's like, oh no. And then he just does. And then on top of that, he brings her right back. That's one of the best knife twists of the movie, where it's like, man,
like betrayal. hardcore.
Yeah, like instead of bring her out of the town, he just brings her right to the center of the town and opens the truck in front of everybody to kind of put her back in chains and stuff. But Alexander, you mentioned something about 9 arrogance, and I mean that was like the kind of pivotal moment of the movie. I mean, do you want to talk about where she gets back with the mobsters?
Well, this is like before she gets back with the mobsters, but there's a level of arrogance a person needs to have to not even be able to read the situation for what it is. Like she's her boundaries are being crossed constantly. She's being assaulted. People, she at some point she has like a lock around her neck with a bell, and she's tied to a weight so that she can't escape. And she's just doing this all gracefully. And in a certain way is not receiving the impact of the humiliation. She still thinks that she's just absorbing a blow for a town that cannot help but be messy and misguided. And like she doesn't receive it as ill intent or disrespect.
Mm-hmm. There's a way that. Go ahead. Sorry.
Well, that's basically what I was going to say. There's a certain concave ego that 9 has in order to be able to absorb that and not feel the impact of it.
Moral superiority is what that is. It's like I'm so above the mess that you meant well. Even though I'm getting raped every single day by the entire town, they're just doing their best.
It's a kind of.
It's not even. Yeah, it's not even necessarily okay. So let's read this for what it is. She's a 9-wing 1. She's definitely a 1-wing. So it's like it is a moral superiority, but it's on a body that can absorb because 1 cannot absorb, right?
It's a kind of aggression, actually, to dissociate, right? In other words, it's a kind of force in a way, right? To absolutely block out what's actually happening is a kind of aggression applied against reality that is absolutely changing what the reality is. So it's on one level, it's like exponentiated aggression in a weird inverse way or something.
God.
You can see the same thing with her boyfriend, who's her foil, Tom. He does it he's kind of the more cowardly version of her. He intellectualizes everything. You mentioned earlier that he didn't do anything when she told him about her assault. There was actually, he was right at the door and he was able to go inside and he turned away. So his dissociation is like front row and center. And so it was interesting for me to see 2 different ways to do the same thing. One makes one person is a victim and the other person is a villain. Like Tom was absolutely a villain in this movie.
Like
you go first.
If you look at him as representing like a politician, he helped her get the money for her escape. And then when the town found out about it, he did not own up to taking the money. He blamed it on her. And she's like, why did you do that? And he framed it, well, I'm looking out for you. And if I'm the one who takes the blame, then I can't help you. So he continues to rationalize exploiting her and putting her in a worse position as ultimately I have to be in a position to help you. Like, just think about how much politicians promise and say they're going to do this and help. And then you end up getting fucked by society, but the politician keeps promising that I'm going to be the one to help you out here, and it actually never pans out.
And even when the city is gone, this big spoilers for the movie. Even when the city is gone, he retreats to his fantasy world, this book that's never going to be written, and he's like, "This is a great plot. I must compliment you." Like, she has a gun pointed at his head, and that's an intense talk about fucking aggression against reality. That's so fucking intense. He couldn't even accept death.
Wow. Yeah. There's his role as a villain is interesting too, because he has the same type of arrogance as we've already talked about, but he's conflicted in an attachment way, because he now has an attachment to Grace, but he cannot cut off his attachment to the town. And that's like part of how he continues to indirectly abuse Grace, is he refuses to cut off the town at all. He refuses to acknowledge anything that the town is doing to her, because he is convinced that he needs to be, he's convinced that he can hold and absorb enough of both ends to solve this problem.
And it gets to a point with him where, like, I agree with you about the politician thing, but I think he's like he's more broadly like um a certain kind of like I'm a good person that
Yeah.
is just hiding complete narcissism and using
Mhm.
people.
Yeah.
And uselessness too. Like I think that there's a certain kind of person that is kind of effectively useless, and so they just pretend to be like, and I don't mean useless just like in a practical way. I mean like there's no creativity happening, and he's like not a creative person, and so he retreats into being kind of vaguely philosophical and thoughtful, and I'm helpful and I'm a good person and I'm gonna speak on your behalf and help you out. And but there's a part where yeah, his like conflict between his attachment to her and his attachment to the town, and you know, they've told each other they love each other, but um, she's not having sex with him, and
Mm-hmm.
he's getting upset because she's getting raped, and
It's just such
she
a
wants
fucked
to
up thing to get upset about.
yeah, and she wants to have like a pure consensual relationship with him, and he's getting agitated because it's not happening. And there was a part of, I can't remember exactly how the narrator framed it, but something about his conflict where his relationship to Grace was actually revealing to him how he was a shitty person, and so therefore he had to eliminate her, like just like the rest of the town was doing.
Yeah.
But it was framed in a really interesting way, where like the town was like getting ready to, weren't they getting ready to like kill her, get rid of her,
Or they were getting ready to get rid of her, but it
give her
was
back
like
to the
this.
mob, right?
Yeah,
Give her
something to
back
that
the mob,
effect.
yeah.
And it was at this point where he's like, we can finally do it, consensually and everything. And she said it still feels wrong. And his frustration, she called him out and said, is it that you're realizing that you're tempted to do as
Yeah.
the others have done?
Mm.
And it sort of like threatened his whole moral fabric when he realized that she was right.
Right.
Like it scared the shit out of him that
But-
he was actually tempted. He was actually considering doing what, and so he had to get rid of her.
Right. And so they send her, they deliver her to the mobsters that she's been hiding from. And you find out that the mobster guy is her dad. And what was the reason she ran away from him? Like, it wasn't even a big deal, right?
Yeah, they were having a fight.
They were having a fight, and in the fight, she calls him arrogant and just like
Ikram, you're
tantrums
muted.
away.
Yeah, I actually do think it was a big deal because to me that felt like he was shooting at her and she fucking came into this town and asked for refuge. And even when all of this was going down, she probably knew in the back of her mind that she could go back to her father, and she refused to due to her morals. And so I feel like it was the reason for her leaving about her father's arrogance and his violence, and just the way he is. I felt like it intensified just her position as like how much she fucking cares about Grace and Nyness or whatever. Like I was shocked when I initially watched the movie. I was shocked by that. I'm like, you could have gone, you could have left. Holy shit! No.
It's interesting if you think about the mobsters as representing sort of like a wild, brutal instincts, and so in order for her to maintain this sort of angelic grace where she's getting abused, she has to divorce herself from her animal instincts.
Mm-hmm.
And the town is supposed to be like a protection from the wild forces that are out there.
That's really good.
And so that they eventually think that they're just going to throw her to the wolves. And then it turns out that she decides to integrate the violence and the instinctual, primal part of her to exact revenge on the people who thought they were. So I thought that was maybe an interesting way to look at what the mafia represented.
Because well, you get to the scene where she's like brought into the mobster's car in the back seat, and you're like, oh fuck, what horrible thing is going to happen to her? And it turns out it's her dad, and they have kind of like a debate, but it's not like a fight. It's more like he's kind of chastising her, and one of the things he says is, Again, I can't remember exactly how it goes, but talks
Says
about,
you're arrogant. You're most arrogant person I know.
yeah, in reference to her speaking to how the town of the residents of Dogville, like, just they're just doing their best and whatever, and he talked about how fucking arrogant that is, and how, like, even though she has been seeing him as arrogant, the mobster father, for his brutality, her refusal to see what's happening is her arrogance and her being above it all and her being too loving, giving, graceful, and it's this, like, and so what I think the kind of meaning or significance of the lack of a set, basically, like, just the transparency of it, is like she can see what the fuck is happening the whole time, but her relationship to herself and her story about what she thinks she's doing, who she's being, is what changes the whole perspective, because it's then she goes back to the town and she's like, wow, it's like she says something about, like, the moonlight has changed everything. And it's just she's changed her perspective, and she's like, yeah, this town can't even exist anymore.
Yeah, well, she feels
Nine
the
rage.
impact of it all at once. She feels the impact, and she stops pardoning everybody. I looked up the quote of what her dad said. He says, you have this perceived notion that nobody could possibly have the same that nobody can possibly attain the same high ethical standards as you, and so you exonerate them. I cannot think of anything more arrogant than that. So that is, like, the quote, but to, I guess, elaborate on that more, or I think this is another part of his, like, monologue that I can't remember, but he talks about how she doesn't give anyone a chance to uphold their own moral high ground because she keeps pardoning them. There's another quote that he says, let me see. He says, dogs can be taught many useful things, but not if we forgive them every time that they obey their nature. So he's coming in as, like, the 8 dad, saying there is a place for punishment, there's a place for boundaries, there's a place for protecting yourself, and it actually does come from a moral, it actually does come from, like, an ethical place. This is how you teach people to develop themselves as, like, a moral person, because 9, of course, distilled with no boundaries. If 9 is just following its own, it just giving away its instincts, everybody is going to be, everyone is going to cross boundaries because there are no boundaries in place. Nobody's going to learn where where they need to stop.
Yeah, it just illustrated rejection to such an extreme degree, because you have this character who's just not enforcing boundaries at all, who's not negotiating their positions at all. So the sort of, like, the worldview of rejection being that, every dynamic has some kind of leverage in it, and it's all negotiation, becomes even much louder. And at some point, that final conflict, that final conversation, in a way, is a conversation that, well, one, that you have to be willing to hold people to the same moral standard that you hold yourself, and that there has to be a line, there has to be a point where you say enough is enough. Like, this is too far. Like, if I'm holding myself to this standard, like, I don't think this is okay, and if someone treats me this way, that's a boundary. If they cross that line, then there has to be a consequence. And so I feel like the story really illustrates that principle in so distinctly, because she is such an impossibly, you could say, naive, or maybe it's like the moral superiority of just, like, everyone's trying their best. Like, there are no boundaries. She just lets the town. There's a point where just all the men are showing up every day to rape her. Like, it's so cartoonish. It's like it's illustrating something so terrible that the 9 is falling asleep and just accepting this ridiculous situation and not negotiating, not pushing back, because they're just doing their best. So it's
the dedication
really,
to her thesis is pretty freaking impressive. If we're gonna loop back to 9 Wing 1 aggression, I mean, that beat her father's, she beat her father at his game or whatever. She was ready to die there.
Yeah, she, like, gets her father's men to just destroy the fucking town and kill everybody.
Yes.
And set it on fire. And what did she say? Something like about Dogville not shouldn't be allowed to exist or something like
Yeah, a
that.
place like this is the way she eventually framed is that a place like this shouldn't exist because getting rid of a place
They're
like
going to
this,
spread it like a disease.
yeah, to make the
Yeah.
world better, this place has to be destroyed. Any place where people would do something like this has to be destroyed to make the world a better place. And it's like she discovered like her own boundaries of like, people can't treat people like this. It's not people, they're not doing their best. Like if this is their best, they have to be eliminated.
And her father did something, he played a really intelligent move because he appealed to her values. He said, you think that you're doing something good by them by giving them no boundaries and accepting everything they do, but they look at what's happened. They've become much more evil than they were when you first met them. And so I think that's when it clicked for her. And then I think the narrator says something like she decided to kill Dogville for the townspeople, for the earth, but also for herself. It's the very last moment she does actually remember that she's a person.
Yeah.
And horrible things have happened to her.
It's an interesting question of does one inherently believe that people are inherently good? Because it feels like her actions are reflecting that people are inherently good at the core, that you can keep hoping that they'll do the right thing. Whereas it seems to me that in nature that things just divulge into organisms killing each other. So if you don't put up boundaries, you are just going to end up being prey eventually. Like people are going to take advantage of you if you let them, if you're just an innocent, open boundary. But it seems like she believes the opposite.
Yeah, I mean, I kind of took it in terms of the film's title, just Dogville. Like, on one hand, you get real sweet, good boys and girls, and then on the other hand, you can have just like feral whatever, and it just kind of, in some sense, it's like kind of the individual natures of the dogs that you run into, and sometimes it's the training, and sometimes the circumstance. But I think that Grace, we're talking about her in terms of 9, but I think overall what she, like a broader way to think about her is kind of like she seems like she just got out of the womb,
Right.
And so
like 9's waking up every second.
But but I think I suspect like why this movie affected you so much, Emeka, is like she kind of represents the body centers, like that core that the body center is trying to protect, which is like, Josh used that term nostalgia for the womb for like what's going on in the body center, and it is like, if you didn't have to enforce your boundaries and continuously protect yourself in the style of 8, 9, or 1, like you'd probably all of us would probably be this very sweet, open thing that could just be just like a hawk's ready to like swoop us up and just take us.
Yeah.
And she just kind of is like a person that never really formed a boundary. And even though she demonstrates like an identity, she's not like without identity. And I think that's what makes the movie kind of effective, is like you get a sense of who she is, and she's affecting characters in a certain way, but like her identity's there, but her boundaries aren't there. And it's kind of like, to me, what is underneath the body center is this innocence, is this something. And so it's like, 8's got to cut off to protect it, 9 dissociates to protect it. And, she particularly represents the failure of that 9 strategy.
Yeah.
And 1's got to like fix the town or whatever to protect that boundary.
Yeah, that's probably why it hit me so hard, because it's like, I can't believe that someone can be this open. And it felt like I was experiencing rejection for the first time, because throughout the entire movie you're like, fucking put up a wall, do something, do something, anything, renegotiate, fucking, you have leverage. And so just to watch everyone is taking the chance to take advantage of to put pressure on her, even the fucking kids. They were like, the 5th time I've seen it, there were things that were coming to me. Like one of them, like later in the movie, the kids were ringing the bells anytime any of the men would go and rape her. Like the kids were participating in the whole thing, and like no one was safe, because at the end you felt like, oh, maybe there was someone who didn't deserve to be killed, but everyone was participating in her exploitation.
I like that idea, though, that she represents the entity or child or infant, even that the 8 armor is specifically armored up against.
Mhm.
You know,
I mean, that's
you
like
know,
the nightmare fantasy. It seems like for 8 of like what's
right.
gonna happen if I'm not doing my 8ness all the time.
Yes,
Mhm.
exactly.
And I think what's so cathartic about it is it's like, so in the end, it's so satisfying that she finally just kills everyone, and she kills the last guy herself, and it felt like it feels like that. Sometimes the way I experience my rage is like every single boundary violation of in like the decades of my entire life. Like whenever I get angry, like all that anger is getting funneled into this one situation, and it feels like that kind of pent up kind of rage. There's nothing more satisfying than just completely wiping the slate. Just leave the dog, but like wiping out the whole town is one of the most satisfying fucking conclusions to a movie I've ever felt.
Yeah.
That's
I mean,
what
I
rejection
agree.
feels
I'm
like.
not an 8, but yeah. I agree. There was the monologue where, and John, you already mentioned this, but the monologue where she, after she got out of the car with her dad, after dad tells her she's arrogant and why she's arrogant and how people actually do need to be put in their place in order to have any hope of being good people. It's not just an outlook that you deserve to give, that people deserve automatically. You have to be taught that. Where was I going with this? Oh, she gets out of the car and, the moonlight, it's just the spotlight on the set. The moonlight casts a different glow and the lights aren't pretty. Suddenly she can see the textures and like the ugly parts of the town, because another part of the movie is every time she talks to the blind man who cannot see, he keeps illustrating how like beautiful different parts of the town are, which really helps to keep this mindset. It's like staging the town for her so that she doesn't have to take in a new impression. If a blind man can feel how good the town is, why should she think any differently?
Yeah.
That thing nines do, like especially where it's just like, oh, like doubting their own perception and adopting somebody else's perception and buying into it. Yeah, totally. It's good.
Yeah, she's just nesting herself right in there. But anyway, the moonlight gets cast in a certain way, and suddenly she can see everybody's darkness and everyone's texture and roughness and mistakes and blah, blah, blah. It's somewhere in that while I was watching the movie for the first time, I recognized, oh shit, she's about to like go crazy. And I like projected myself into her body. I was like, I hope she kills the whole place. I hope she just like lights the place on fire. Every single person needs to go down. Fuck all of them. So there's that. And then there's another part. Emeka, I can't remember if this is maybe a compliment. I can't remember if it's the dad in the movie that said it or if it was you that said it in the discussion after we all watched it. Maybe both.
Same difference.
Yeah.
Another nineism happening right here, right now. The merge.
But one of you guys said that it actually, those boundaries and that self-protection doesn't even have to be other people, because she kind of, in her, how do I say this? In her renegotiation with herself, she still kind of is making it about other people. It's about protecting other people.
Right.
She's still self-effacing in her morality.
Right.
And so I can't remember if it's the dad or you, whatever, both dads. Somebody says that protection can just be for you.
Yeah.
It can, even if it's protecting nothing else, it should be protecting your own innocence.
Mm-hmm.
Your own sincerity, your own and that's also such an 8 word, right? The holy innocence applies to 8.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. The virtue.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a really good point, because one thing I had to realize, I mean, the 8 sort of trap can be like, there's so much I can take on that I'm tough enough to take on, and it feels like you can damage your own certain inner experiences of yourself that you can permanently damage by what you allow yourself to experience. And so a lot of times, like I have put myself in positions where I said, I can take this. I can handle it. And then 6 months later, I'm dealing with some level of heartbreak that I've never experienced before. And I'm still telling myself that this isn't affecting me. But I've wounded myself permanently, actually. And learning that I do have to be protective of certain things that are precious, like my own self-respect, like the respect that you have for yourself is something that you have to protect. It's not like the respect other people have for you, but the reputation I have with myself, what I'm willing to accept. So like I say sometimes that you have to do things on principle, like your own principle. Like I cannot allow this, and you have to protect that. It's like, are you the kind of person that just gets raped continuously and does nothing?
And what will that do to you? What will that do to the outlook, especially for an attachment type that is just constantly updating and adapting? What will that do to your outlook on people? What will that do to your outlook on yourself? How will that affect your behaviors moving forward because you have those outlooks? Going back to the virtue of holy innocence, this is protecting like the pureness that you were born into.
Yeah, part of I think it was Emeka that raised this point after the movie, but it was like protecting yourself is its own kind of ethical thing that is often, especially for nines, but all kinds of types, cannot see basic self-protection as ethical because you're doing something quote-unquote selfish, but it's like that innocence in us, your soul, basically, needs you to guard it. And it's like, even if everything is fucked up in the whole world, like to protect your soul is like, could be the only important thing. But it's like, is it actually about protecting your soul versus just being a dick or, whatever. But that standing up for yourself, like that's, when I like, obviously I work with a lot of nines, and there's a thing about, that we all know, like nines will have a difficult time standing up for themselves, advocating for themselves. And part of the work I do with a lot of nines is helping them to register what's happening in their boundaries. And it's not like they're choosing their boundaries to be affected in a particular way. It's just they are being affected. And so almost like they're protecting somebody else, because like a nine will stand up like, like nobody's business for somebody they care about. For themselves, it's like, oh, I don't know. It's like protecting yourself, but like almost like you're both connected to yourself and detached at the same time, instead of dissociated. It's like to see what's happening to your boundaries, to see what's happening to you is like almost as if you are protecting yourself as another person. Is like really important, including yourself in that way. And it's like an active thing. And it's like, as you guys are saying, we've been touching on this identity stuff with Heart Center recently, and everything, no matter how much you think you can endure, everything has a cost in your identity. Everything is a vote on your identity. And so to put yourself through experiences, your identity is being put through, your heart is being put through those experiences too. Even if you think it's not going to affect you or touch you, it's like it still has a consequence. It still has an impact, whether you register it or not. And I think a lot of people go through things, put themselves through things, and then they're like, whoa, why do I feel so fucked up and alienated and weird around my own heart? And so, the boundary thing and the identity thing are very closely related.
It's like the 8 thing is animal ethics applied to yourself, if that makes sense. In other words, it's not exactly the same as ethics as in moral good and bad. It's just similar to the parental instinct to protect, a child, your offspring animal or something. It's yes, we could assign that as good or morally good or whatever, but it's just happening. You know what I mean? It's just a reflex. It's like animal justice or something, just in the moment.
Yeah, and animal justice is also how there's any kind of order in the not that we're exempt from the animal world, but that's also how there's any kind of order in that in what we perceive as chaos.
Right.
Packs of animals don't fuck with other packs of animals because they've done it once and got they're pushed against.
Exactly.
Right.
I think we were watching Predators, and it's just you know, like the like a male will have like a family, some kids and some females, and the male is just sitting there waiting for other males who are just going to show up and they're going to fight. And if the other males kill the male that has a family, they get the family, and then they kill the kids, and it's like this. Everyone is constantly protecting their boundaries, and the only way that anything is enforced or anyway is through life or death. Like, we're gonna fight to the death, or you know, one of us is gonna disengage. I'm gonna take what's yours, or you're gonna take what's mine. I'm gonna kill you because I want to eat you, or vice versa.
The mysterious Mel Montero.
It also, like, just listening to you guys talk, I think 8 is also possibly trying to protect vitality. I know, I'm just thinking about all this shit that my mom has said to me, like, through the years. But it's like, she'll often look at, she'll look at me and how passive I can be and things like that. And she's like, you don't want to take too many hits because you can't get back up. And if we think about, like, I don't know, maybe this is a stretch, but like just trauma being trapped in the body.
Yes.
And like, you need to shake, you need to do something. You need to show that you are, this is not okay, you know? So yeah, it feels, and if you think about the movie, you know, as things get really bad for her, she dissociates and she gets into a stuck place where she just loses so much of her energy and just like even emotional affect. It's literally draining the life out of her. I mean, you just said life or death. That does feel like the consequences of having your boundaries crossed too much. It'll slowly kill you.
That's really good. That's probably why there's so many like undead 9s walking around the planet too.
Yeah. It feels like you can break somebody. You can, if you're violated enough times, you can be mentally broken or you can be emotionally broken. And it feels like 8s are trying to distance themselves from that feeling of brokenness or powerlessness, because it's like, I have to respond to this violation. Even if it's just to prove to myself that I'm still here and I'm still alive and this is not something that I'm going to tolerate. Like that has to be maintained, because my own life force has to be maintained. Like, if I'm just someone who takes it, then I'm dying. I'm less of a person. I am someone who just gets abused. I've been broken to some degree. And it's like, you can't accept that.
Yeah, and there's a 9-ish vibe in 8, you know, of leave me alone. And like, I mean, rejection is like cutting off so that I'm left to fuck alone. Like, and I think a lot of the stereotypes of 8 are just like, I'm gonna get right into the middle of it and all this kind of stuff.
No.
But no, there's a lot of just like,
don't touch me.
Yeah, don't touch me. And what I've always appreciated about 8 is there's like a real sense of like preciousness that 8s can be really in contact with. And I mean, you know, I've been friends with multiple 8s growing up, and like, you know, we meet it too. 4 and 8. And so there's this precious softness or whatever. And 8s, like, when they're in touch with themselves, like, they are aware that the thing they're protecting is that softness, versus an 8 that isn't aware, and they're like, 8 that's not aware that they're protecting that softness is just like, they are putting themselves through horrible things and taking those blows, but in a way they're not even registering. But yeah, that sense of like, like the vulnerable offspring, like the cubs or whatever. Protect Montero's cubs, or you know, whatever. It's like, that's the thing.
Yeah.
Well, I've just brought up this movie multiple times to I think mostly 9s that I've worked with, but just to kind of illustrate that point about the necessity of advocating for yourself. Yeah. You know? And like, it's not about like necessarily like, oh, everybody's taking advantage of you or everybody's evil or something, but it's like things go down a really dark path when a 9 thinks they're doing the right thing often, right? Like when often the 9 will justify its passivity as being like kind or being tolerant. And sure, a little bit of that's good, but not too, like, not you know, 5%, not 95%. You know? It's like,
Right.
I think there's a point at which some 9s decide that I must devalue and make that innocent grace, you know, well, just dark or something. Like I have to flip it entirely because it's too much to bear or something, or just as some kind of defense. Because if I'm always this newborn infant that can adapt and see the good and all that stuff, it's just it's too violent of an offense against ultimately my autonomy, which I do want as a gut type or something. I don't know if that's
And this is just not for
some
core
logic
nines. I
there.
think nine fixtures also are going to
Mhm.
have this issue. Ikram.
Yeah, Ikram.
Yeah, I think I know where you're going, David. I don't have the words for it yet, but I think I know what you're talking about. There is a way that nine kind of comes to a crossroads.
Yeah.
It's more like a billion tiny little crossroads, because
Yeah,
anything
maybe.
too tangible and direct is like a no-go. But there is like a slow kind of metamorphosis into like relinquishing the innocence in a certain
Yes.
way in exchange for more autonomy protection.
I mean, I've described it in relation to my relationship between nine, wide open, receptive, yes to everything. Kind of that's an elemental aspect of nine versus being self-pres dom and it being an absolute imperative to have a wall. And so there's a way that I intentionally, de-innocentized myself significantly over the years. And it felt like I absolutely had to do that.
Hmm.
There was no other choice but to do that.
Yeah, that's interesting. Yeah, so to like wrap it up with nine too. Like we're talking about all these ways that illustrated in the movie nines can just allow themselves to be abused and eventually become complicit in their own abuse. A lot of that follows the like popular literature with nines, and just like they're just kind of passive and they can be doormats and blah blah blah. You know, you can kind of just push them around. They be nice to them because they can't take care of themselves, kind of vibe. What I really, really appreciated about the movie was the illustration of the arrogance at the end of the movie. Like, it's crazy that it even was the word arrogant. Because that's the only way that it all happens. Like, nine doesn't realize it's being abused. It doesn't feel the impact of that. And this is now just putting a bookend to when I said this earlier. But there is, like, the moral superiority comes... How do I say this? The moral superiority is in the belief that I can handle this. You can't handle a boundary that would break you, but I can take this. You're too weak to be able to like uphold any kind of, or to bear any kind of punishment or pushback. You poor thing. I will take this for you.
That's really good.
So I think that was like an important thing to realize, because I think a lot of nines uphold that, and then they look back at their lives and they realize they've been abused the whole time.
I have a friend
Like, that
who,
arrogance is like really fucking you up.
I have a friend who he's a Gurdjieff teacher and has been in the Gurdjieff work a long time. And when he learned about his Enneagram type as a 9, he said something he said it in a really funny way, but he said something like, yeah, all this time I thought I was like increasing my being and being able to endure more and be non-reactive and all this stuff like this. And then I found out I'm just doing exactly what my type is, like.
Yeah.
You think you've attained enlightenment, but you're just a 9.
Just a 9.
Well,
Yeah.
well,
Oops.
I mean, now I'm gonna bookend, as Alexandra said. The whole thing we were talking about, like everything being religious, like the combination of everybody's core type, trifix, and instincts does make a religion. And so, like, when you, you're gonna apply it to anything, and gonna actually the tendency is to think that all self-development or growth or whatever is more of your type.
Yes,
Mm-hmm.
it
Yeah.
is.
Yeah, you're just gonna, because it's an unconscious religion that's ruling your whole world.
Yeah. I had the same realization when I was typed a 7. I was like, I figured out how to reframe things and be positive and da-da-da. I thought it was a 6 for a time. It's like, oh,
Yeah,
that's my whole fucking thing.
yeah,
You're not
God.
doing anything.
yeah. You didn't do anything.
Time
haven't
wasted.
You haven't even started, Ikram.
I don't want to start.
Yeah, it's interesting to look at
Either.
some of these like religions and cults and how they are. I mean, once you understand the instincts and the types and everything, that they are shaped exactly in the image, in the structure of the leader's type and instincts. We were looking at Osho today and how much of his cult is a social, sexual 7 structure. Like, let's get everyone together. It's not like go off on your own and do these exercises. Let's do them together. Let's create a frenzy. You see people just like losing their minds, like, and let's create like a socially transformative group where people are engaging in these transformative things together. And it's all about freedom and pushing up against societal norms. Get rid of monogamy,
Right.
drugs and fancy cars and opulence, and we can live the good life and we can get away from the day-to-day drudgery of self-pres and just live in this commune where it's not even real, it's fantasy. It's and then you look at some other groups and it's like self-pres social 9, you know.
Yeah.
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 That's actually pretty interesting because it feels like art is, you can kind of sink into some other milieu or school of thought for a moment. Because I found, I don't know, to loop it back to Dogville, I found it like incredibly moving. It kind of changed my psychology, for better or worse, I don't know. But like it fucked with me a lot. I watched it with you and Al, both of you are rejection types. And both of you were emotionally moved. And I think I remember you guys saying, this just feels like what happened to us before we were born, to see somebody else have to just go through it. And yeah, my point was, it just makes me appreciate art a lot. Yeah.
Yeah, like something like this can confront you with rejection and attachment in a way that reading a description or someone telling you, like, you're actually moved through the experience. So by the end, you can feel the full weight of it. So it's cool to be able to see something so clearly like this in art in a way that you experience it.
Yeah, there's a way I just can't find the rejection piece inside of me or whatever. Like the arrogance that was depicted in the movie about, like, if you're just kind to people and you absorb things and you stick by them as they're shitty or whatever, one day that they'll turn and like be healed by your presence or something, and you guys could be together forever. That feels like so true. Back to the religion piece. It actually just feels so true. And I keep on going, looping back to I feel like it has, I don't think, like, I think every single, I feel like every single number has some like perspective, POV about what's like what's going on with reality. But it's like maybe 1 out of 9 times.
Right.
Yeah.
In a very specific way. Right.
Yeah. So this was like a horrible sinking feeling watching this, and just like, oh, like, this might have just been killing me the whole time, and I've been making this other person worse. We've all just been hanging out in hell together. Ugh, I hated it, but it's good.
Yeah, the idea of, I'm kind of going into a thing of just like, I think, David, you've said this once, or you say this, I don't know, people seem to think this is yours. This idea that 9 amplifies other types, like when it's like a 9 and other type pairing, that the other type gets amplified because 9 just makes more space for them.
Well, one
Something
thing
like
is
that?
one thing is just the kind of I don't know. Well, just the low budget sort of mathematical metaphor of add 9 to any number, like add 9 to 7, that equals 16. You add the 1 and the 6, and that's 7. The 9 disappears. there's shit like that.
Yeah, that's good. Yeah, it's just making me think that like 9 that is not upholding itself is just actually making people worse.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
It's
No, that's
actually
true.
just making people worse. So John, I'm about to make you so much better. Just be ready.
I'm
With your
I'm not
grace.
getting away with shit now.
You've been so calm and passive
I've been
and easygoing. You've been so chill
Such
and
a light
mellow and
breeze.
enabling. Yeah.
Puerto Rican.
Yeah.
Girlfriend is Puerto
Yeah.
Rican first,
Alright, fine.
and then she's an addict.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah.
I want to
Okay,
get the hell
cool
out of here.
movie.
All right.
Yeah. Hopefully, I can wrangle an episode worth listening to out of that.
I think we're good.
I think so.
I
Yeah.
think it was good.
Now
Yeah.
I'll actually watch it.
Yeah.
It's really good, David. I think you should watch it. Maybe you went unconscious because you just didn't want to deal with it.
Yeah, it was-
Your worst.
Yeah,
worst
I had to
night.
dissociate.
Have a fix.
I mean,
David is our grace.
there it is, David Grace.
Yeah.
Right.
I was.
All right.
All right, bye guys.
Bye, y'all.
Peace be with you.
Bye.